So I'm a bit late to the party, but after watching the Zhanhu reveal, I am pumped. It looks absolutely amazing. Zhanhu, aka Sunda, aka the Dai Li from Avatar, looks like a really solid, fun character, or I'm hoping a solid character. Fun, I think I definitely will have. The character it looks creative yet very simplistic, taking mechanics that we already have and pushing them a little further. And unfortunately, it's a good and a bad thing. Because on one hand, we get a new mechanic, not new, but we get a familiar mechanic that I enjoy using, which I enjoy dodging a lot, so I play a lot of Tiandi and everything. But we get that, and it pushes it pushes dodge attacks just a little further. It doesn't do anything too crazy or too innovative, but it's still, Ubisoft is still, messing with the dodge mechanics, and that's nice because I'm one of those people who do like to play the dodge heavy characters. But the character looks absolutely amazing, and I'm praying that the character is viable competitively because it looks fun. But the one thing that will hurt it is if it's not very viable. And I don't mean it needs to be a complete noob stomp or it needs to absolutely destroy everybody every single time, but somebody who can just hold their ground without being frustrating. And a lot of characters, that's a problem a lot of characters in the game suffer right now, but that's a topic for something else. Uh, this character, I hope they're not viable because of some kind of, I guess the right word to use would be a crutch. Like, whereas Hitokiri is super viable right now for just because that instant hyper armor. And I'm not saying uh, Hitokiri won't be viable when her changes go live, which is something else I'll talk about. But I also don't want anything like that because it's annoying. I want a character to be strong because of their whole kit, not just one little thing that happens to give them the upper advantage. Because it's not a very fun thing for a lot of people. And another thing with the Daily is I'm hoping that it is not Tiandi 2.0 and Kensei 2.0. People are saying, "Oh, what is Tiandi doing with Kensei Sword?" And I'm sitting here like, bruh. I to me it takes elements from those, but it's not, to me it doesn't look like Tiandi or Kensei, and I'm hoping that it's not like that. It's not just Tiandi or Kensei because I play a lot of Tiandi, and if it's just a Tiandi clone, it'll be sad, a little sad. And then another thing is this character does not have any form of a bash, which means they will be relying on, or they don't have a bash from neutral, I should say, which means for opening people up, they'll have to be using lights or some other, or they'll have to start going from their dodge, assuming they're counterattacking. But I'm hoping the character just doesn't have to turtle and sit there because I, playing like a turtle is never fun, especially for me. I can't do that. I got ADD, ADHD, whatever you want to call it. I can't do that. It's impossible for me. But the character is looking real good. And another thing with the Dai Li is the unblockable lights. That's something I've heard thrown around, and of course it get memed all the time. It really does, or at least from what I see, people always joke about, hey, I remember especially when the Wulun were coming out, people were like, hey, we're gonna introduce unblockable lights, and it was a joke for a while, especially when the Wulin just came out because the backlash with the Wulin. But unblockable lights sound interesting, And it looks interesting for the simple fact that those lights look really slow. I don't know if it's just me. I don't think it is, but they look very, very slow. So I just kind of need to see that in action. And when I see that, then, I feel like I'll be able to speak more confidently on whether or not it's something they should do or whether something they shouldn't do. But if it ends up being something they shouldn't do, which God forbid, I hope these unblockable lights turn out fine, because I would kind of want to see that in the game. But of course it's going to get a lot of negative reaction. But hopefully if they do end up having to take it out, which God forbid they don't, hopefully they do give Zhanhu something to compensate for that, because it'd be a shame. But outside of like the gameplay side of Zhanhu, his appearance, like his armor, absolutely fire, amazing. The second I saw Zhanhu, I was already in love. Sunda, he looks amazing between all of his armor sets, and I know the second he comes out, I'm grinding to rep 8 just so I can get everything. Like that's my goal as soon as he comes out. Grind to rep 8 just so I can get all of those armor sets. Because I personally, there wasn't an armor set that I disliked. I liked all of them. And then when it came to the weapons, his weapons looked solid. I mean, they're not bad or anything. The art team, like, whoever designs this cosmetics and stuff like that, they usually never, ever, ever do a bad job. So the weapons are nice, but I don't care too much for the weapons, for the simple fact that I don't like really bright, colorful, flashy stuff. I'm a pretty plain and basic dude. And then on top of that, what really caught my attention was his lore. Cause one thing, lore is irrelevant in For Honor. Like, who cares about the lore? But the lore, they've been trying to push lore a bit more in For Honor. And this year we've had some pretty like dark, savage-like characters. And basically, Zhanhu kinda, I don't want to say he goes against that, because Zhanhu is an absolute terrible human being. The male, at least. I don't remember the female story, but the Zhanhu, he pretty much betrays his family just for a seat at the Emperor's side, if I remember correctly. And with him, it's not even like he's not exactly a murderer like Hitokiri, or he's not exactly somebody who's like Blackbriar, who's trying to be on the play outside of the rules sort of thing, or he's not Yorm, where they just want to spread their religion very violently. But it's he's the secret police. Like, the Zhanhu are the secret police of the Emperor, and they're pretty much it's kind of, I guess, stereotypical, because China's secret police, I guess, because some people make jokes like that. But I think it's really nice, and it's kind of refreshing, because I was curious how they were going to do that, because the Wulin, since they've been introduced, they've been more elegant. They've been a lot less savage than the other three factions, and the Knights and the Samurai and the Vikings. They nobility and elegance with them, and I'm glad that, even with this, even if he is technically a hybrid or whatever, he's not a heavy, because I don't know why, but he's not a heavy. He's technically a hybrid, but even in the Year of the Dark Heroes, they still managed to retain the elegance, and they add a bit of savagery. Isn't the right word, but we're gonna say savagery anyway. And as for Zhanhu's feats, I like them. I think they're pretty good. I think it'll be fun to play with. His first feat, Fiery Tusk, it's a projectile. It's like kunai. Just does 10 damage, which is kind of abysmal, but I mean, it's good for finishing people off, and that's really what kunai is good for, finishing people off, or just if you really want to try and equal out health because you're losing. But it's like kunai, does 10 except it does 10 damage, but when you light the enemy on fire, the damage increases to 15 on top of that 10. So you get a 35 damage, and that's for the tier 1 feat, but that you have to have them on fire to get the 35 damage. But even then, for tier 1 projectile, which I'm assuming isn't going to have a super high cooldown, it's pretty solid. Then the next feat, the tier 2 feat, I don't know Mandarin, so this is going to sound awful. The QILIN RUSE. It's basically just a trap, almost I guess like a bear trap, and except trapping people and deleting their stamina and doing damage to them, it's going to set people on fire. Whoever walks into it, or enemies that walk into it, whether it be a single enemy or multiple enemies. And the thing that caught my attention with this one was the fact that it's like a throwable little grenade. And then on top of that, it doesn't leave a pool of fire. Cause right now, Fire Flask, that's a pretty strong feat in the game right now. And this is kind of like a very toned down Fire Flask, at least in my opinion, which I kind of like because Fire Flask is very annoying. Then the third feat, Fiery Breath, it's a passive. The only passive that out of the unique feats that Zhanhu's getting. And basically it increases the damage to the burning targets, and it applies fire damage according to the devs. And then it's pretty simplistic, but it's very reliant on having people on fire, which doesn't seem like it'll be too difficult, especially with how environmentals are, and the fact that they're kind of everywhere, and there's usually a fire somewhere, and even if there's not a fire somewhere, you have your own ways to set people on fire, assuming that there isn't a better option for the other two feats. Setting people on fire shouldn't be too hard. And then for the fourth feat, Scorching Deluge, that one sounds that one also, it sounds a little bit like it's a weird version of Fire Flask, pretty much. That's how I gathered it. Basically, around Zhanhu, it'll shoot out a white circle, and any of the enemies inside that white circle, they'll have a pretty sizable, it's small, but kind of, I'd say it's pretty sizable circle of fire just put on the ground underneath them. And it'll leave the pool of fire, unlike the second feat, so that's even more fire for you to play with. So basically, on top of it's a weird crossover between the Dai Li and the Firebender, which I'm personally down for. Overall, I think Zhanhu is a very yes character. I'm very happy for him. I can't wait for him, and I hope they continue with the good work, because I think so far from what it looks like, I haven't played him yet, but so far from what it looks like they've done a good job. But on top of being the Dai Li, we get to defend Ba Sing Se, aka Qiang Pass, which looks absolutely amazing. I saw Qiang Pass and I instantly was freaking out. I was screaming, I was yelling on the inside, and I was just so happy to finally see a Wulin map, because China's got some pretty nice yet interesting architecture, and it's, especially like ancient China, I think it's pretty nice looking. With the Ba Sing Se though, it leaves me hoping that we do get a lot more new Wulin maps, because at this point, I've seen the Knight maps, I've seen the Viking maps, I've seen the Samurai maps. I want China. I need the Wulin. And then another thing with Ba Sing Se is that I feel like it is another lore thing, but the Wulin, I feel like there needs to be some kind of setup of why the Wulin are there exactly, and why I get it, like they've been in the game for like a year, so they have to have a foothold somewhere, and they managed to somehow plop down a a city inside or near what sounded like Night territory, Heathmore, I believe. So they managed to set themselves up, but like, what exactly are they doing there? Are they just like everybody else, just fighting for land? Like they just came over here and they now want land? I feel like, you know, we finally need that Wulin faction now that they have their own map, and I feel like their objectives need to be laid out or need to be told to us a lot more clearer. And maybe this is going a little too far, but maybe even show us a bit of their military setup or whatever. Just like in the story, we kind of have ideas on the samurai, on the knights, and the Vikings, but we don't really have any idea what the Wulin are doing or anything like that, or how it's even like on the inside. All we know is that there's an emperor, they got some warriors, they got a foothold in Heathmore, which is Qing Pass, aka Ba Sing Se. And then also the Wulin are surprisingly strong as a faction. They're not really a faction in the game or anything, and the story doesn't recognize them, which then again, it doesn't matter because it's the story and this is lore. But the fact that the Wulin have their own city and they've been defending it for a really long time, because when they were going over the overview, they said the Wulin have been fighting there at one of their bastions for a very long time, and the enemies had just got through the bastion. So it sounds like the Wulin are very formidable, despite what sounds like having very little people to fight for them. And another thing is, it's also a shame that this might come in when the Wulin finally become their own faction, but they don't have their own commander or their own minions, which hopefully that does change soon, because I want to see what Wulin minions and a Wulin commander would look like. It sounds very interesting. I'm just hoping that a lot of people do end up flocking back to Breach, because Qing Pass does look nice. It does look nice, and who doesn't want to defend Ba Sing Se, especially, you know, loyal earthbenders like me. Like, who doesn't want to defend Ba Sing Se? But that's really all I have to really say about this season 12 stuff, and I'm pretty happy and I'm excited for it. I really am. I want to see how everything plays out, especially with Raider Hitokiri. I want to see Zhanhu and how he plays out. I really want to be able to see Qing Pass with my own two eyes, like be able to actually go there, run around and defend Ba Sing Se. And I just think it'll be great as soon as it launches. If you want to talk about anything, leave a comment, and, you know, don't be toxic. That's pretty much it. At this point, I don't really have too much to say, so I'm just gonna let the video keep rolling and show off a little bit more of Qing Pass if anybody even made it this far. And if you did, thank you. I appreciate it.